So I'm with Burke Lance and we're at Spring Lake, and when I've driven by here on I-15 looking at this particular mountain right behind Burke, it always looked to me like this was an ancient mine dump, because you can see how it comes straight across out of the mountain. It doesn't angle down like the rest of them, like they was wheelbarrowing or hauling dirt out of a mine. And if that is an ancient mine dump, man, that's one heck of a hole in that mountain there somewhere. Yeah. But anyways, I did not know that that's what they call the Sugarloaf. And there's a story about the Sugarloaf gold. And I got Burke Lance with me here, and he's going to share with us the story of the Sugarloaf gold. And then later on, he's going to take us on a field trip and show us some of these areas. And so with that, Burke, take it away.
All right, here we go. We're here in Spring Lake, Utah, where I was born and raised. And ever since I was a little kid, myself and many Spring Lakers have heard of the Sugarloaf gold story. And I was always told by my parents and great-grandparents that somewhere up in these mountains is a cavern full of gold ingots. And the way the story goes is, back in the 1800s, there was some trappers that were looking for beaver, and the trapping was getting kind of slim. So they started out up north, up by the Great Salt Lake, and they started coming southward following the stream, well, it had been Jordan River. And every side stream that come down from all the canyons, as they followed the Jordan River, they would go up them and see if there was any beavers or anything to trap. And in the story it says they came to a valley to the south and found a beautiful lake. And I always believed that would be Utah Lake. And they followed the eastern shoreline of Utah Lake. And they didn't do very good as far as finding very many beavers to trap. They made their way all the way down to the south end of this lake, and they followed a stream, and I believe they ended up right here in Spring Lake. The story goes that as they were following a stream, they saw some wickiups, some Indian tents, and they were on the north side of all the springs that were right here in Spring Lake. So they decided to skirt up and around them to get away from Indians. They didn't know if the Indians were friendly or not. And before they knew it, they were sneaking through the cedars on their horses. And before they knew it, one of the trappers had an arrow sent right through his back. So they knew Indians were after him. And they were forced to go up higher in the foothills to try to get away. And one of the trappers seen what appeared to be a badger hole, just big enough for them to crawl into. So it was what they did in a hurry and in a frantic, is they all jumped off of their horses, swatted their horses out, so their horses would keep going to throw the Indians off. And then all the trappers jumped down in that little badger hole, is what they called it. And the way the story goes, the one trapper that got shot in the back, they had to pull him down in there, and there was some sticks and stuff in there. They stayed in there, was it 3 days? They stayed in there for quite a while because they were afraid if they came out, the Indians would find them. So there was some sticks they found in there. They lit a fire inside of there to stay warm. And one of the sticks was big enough they could use as a torch. And they decided that they wanted to, because it looked like this badger hole kept going further back and opened up into a bigger cavern.
It did open up into a bigger cavern once they got inside of it. It was a bigger cavern.
Yeah. So they used this torch, this one stick as a torch. And they walked back in there. And the way it's described in the story is they found gold stacks of gold ingots. Or I think would just be gold bars, right?
Gold bars.
Just stacks of gold bars. Could you imagine that? And then it says that they were just so excited, and they went back to show their one trapping buddy that had been shot in the back, and they found that he had passed away already. So what they did is they drug his body further back in and got these gold bricks and stacked them, basically covered his body up. And then they discussed...
So why'd they stack the gold bricks over him?
Well...
So the wild animals didn't get him, tear him up and all that? Or
yeah.
To protect his body?
Protect his body, probably out of respect, I'd imagine. Yeah. And then they discussed between themselves because they found this huge treasure, and they don't have their horses. So they discussed, well, what can we do? We can't, they're so big and heavy, we're not going to be able to run with them or take them anywhere. So they discussed, they decided to leave them there and make a documentary of its location and its whereabouts. And the one main thing that stands out is the Sugarloaf Peak at the base of the mountain.
And where's that at?
And that is this one right here. And it's the one that's very flat on the top. It almost looks like an ancient mine dump. It's very strange. And you can see it. You can see it from Payson. It stands out.
Yes, you can. If you travel along the I-15 corridor, going from Payson to Santaquin, it sticks out, and it 100% looks like an old mine dump.
Yeah. Yeah.
A huge old mine dump.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating. So, and I've grown up hiking these mountains, me and my brothers, when we were kids, and we've always had that story in the back of our minds, and we've always been searching, and we'll find there's a lot of old mines from prospectors, early 1900s era, but haven't had any luck. There is some red ledges. In the story, it says 3/4 of a mile southerly from the Sugarloaf Peak. So we've done a lot of exploring up in here, and there is some red ledges. If you go up this, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a kind of a main canyon that goes all the way up. There's some red ledges up that one, and we've done some exploring up there, but we've just never had any luck.
So basically, they didn't have a pen and paper. So they committed the location this to memory, waiting until they could get back and get a pen and paper and write it down, and they planned on coming back someday.
Yes.
And that never happened. Life got in the way, and they never ever made it back here to this area.
Yep.
So how did we find out about this then?
So it was, Johnny Rasmussen was going through some of his grandfather's old belongings, and he found this old map. And because of this old map, he decided he wanted to come back up here and try to discover the location of these gold ingots. And that's what he did. And I know in the description of this old map, there's a great salt sea. And I don't know of any other great salt seas that's western United States. And so this is where he ended up. And if you do look to the south, you got this valley, and you look to the south, and it closes. And that's one of the details in the map, too. So Johnny Rasmussen was in, I believe he came up to Springville, and he was talking to some people and telling them of the story. And he heard about the Dream Mine. So he went and talked to Coyle about the dream mine, and Coyle told him, this is the place. I had a dream about several rooms in this mine that's full of all kinds of things. And he said, this is the place. And Johnny Rasmussen, he started to believe him, but there was two things that didn't fit about the location of the dream mine. And Johnny was wondering. He said that there's no cedar trees, for one, and there was no rusty red ledges over there. So that's when he started talking to some other people and found out about the Bullocks mine. And everything about the Bullocks mine in this area fit perfectly, because there was cedar trees here, and there's rusty red ledges up there. When Johnny came down here and met with the Bullocks, the one thing that bothered him is when he looked around, there was no cedar trees here either. And Mr. Bullock told him, well, all the farmers that came in and settled this area, they cut the cedar trees down, used them for fence posts and for firewood. And so he decided to go along with it. And when they were clearing off some area at the foothills up here, one of their plows hit a stump, and it was a cedar tree stump that had been, the top of it or the bottom of it had been cut. And that, once Johnny seen that, he got really excited and believed, okay, yes, this whole mountain had cedar trees on it. And then he realized this has got to be the place. So once they made their base camp at the foothills, they started tunneling in, and they made the decision that they were gonna tunnel in for a little ways and then turn both directions and follow the contour of the mountain to try to find this ancient cavern, to see if they could find it. So upon clearing the brush and the trees and looking for any cavern or any remnants of anything being up here in ancient times, they came across what appeared to be an old dump, and they found a bunch of charcoal. And back in ancient times, it has been said that the ancients, to mine for the minerals they mined, that they would heat up the ore and then pour cold water on it and fracture it. And they believe that that's what they found. They found an ancient mine. So they spent all summer digging on this, and then this mine, and exploring the area. And winter hit, and Johnny decided that he needed to head back for home. And he wrote several letters to the Bullocks, but after a while, the letters stopped coming. The Bullocks did keep mining and exploring and looking for these ancient gold bars in this ancient mine. But eventually those letters, they stopped coming. Johnny was never heard from again, and the excitement kind of settled down, and some of the history was lost and forgotten. And so somewhere up in those hills is a cavern full of gold ingots.
Okay, so I know you know, as a kid growing up here, man, you scoured these mountains, not even treasure hunting. You know, even though you come from a treasure hunting family, just as being a kid, you loved exploring and you've seen a lot of interesting things. So I want you to take me on a little trip and show me all these side canyons, all these interesting things that you've found, and what you know about this area. You gonna do that?
Absolutely.
All right, it's a date. We're gonna go.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
So just a few years ago, we were, me and my brother, myself, and our kids, we were just hiking up on these foothills, and we were basically looking for deer sheds, just kind of hiking around. And we found something very fascinating we never found before. At the same level, to the right of Sugarloaf, there's a little flat spot before it goes steep, and then there's another one right over here, and I think there's one in between you can't really see. 3 different areas where it's a little bit flat. You could see where there's these piles of white rocks, and they're really old because you can barely even make them out, because I mean, some of them are scattered.
So it used to be a pile of, they used to be stacked up, but they're kind of...
Yeah, almost like markers in 3 different spots, and we were really fascinated by that. Couldn't figure out what that was. And then for years and years, we would take our 4-wheelers when we were kids, and we'd go up to to Bullock's Syndicate mine. And in the wintertime, at one spot up kind of high up, you could look across to the east, and you can see an old trail cutting across, going to the bottom of that main canyon, like an old pack trail or something. We could never tell what it was. And it was this year I decided I wanted to go check it out. So my son and I went hiking from the bottom all the way up, and we found that old trail. And it's really old. It's I don't think it's from the loggers when they logged this. I think it's older than that. We found it cutting across, and you can see in some areas, I mean, it was a wide trail. In some areas it sloughed off. Some areas there's trees, 6 inches in diameter growing right up through it. But we followed it. We found it right below the ledges up there, and we followed it on this finger to the right of Sugarloaf. We followed it down, and it doesn't come straight down. It's got big switchbacks all the way down it. Almost, I could envision pack horses with gold, mules with gold, carrying gold, just coming down. That's what I was thinking. I think that trail is a pretty ancient trail.
With that said, let's go on a field trip.
Sounds good. Hike up the canyon, you'll find that there is some red ledges up in there. And me and my boy Stetson have been up there on several occasions. We did find one little hole that looked like a small badger hole, and we dug it out a little bit, but I don't think it went anywhere. But that's how the story goes. And there's lots of old mine holes to the south of here, and there's just, I think it's still in there. I think maybe it'll be found when it's meant to be found. Okay, we're up here above Spring Lake, the base of Dry Mountain, and I believe it was the Bullocks that had some mines up here. One of them is the Syndicate mine, but the guy that came up looking for the gold bars talked to the Bullocks and told them the story about the gold bars. And so they talked about putting a base camp in for all of their mine and production on search of this cavern that's full of gold bars. And I believe that this spot right here, because in the story it says there was a bunch of land that was leveled off for a base camp, and I believe this is it. It's at the bottom of the Syndicate Road.
This has definitely been leveled off.
Yes, and I believe this is it. And when they were leveling off the land, and I think it was right here, with whatever grader or whatever they were using, they hit a cedar post. And that's when that guy got really excited, because he realized, okay, they're telling me the truth. There was cedar trees up here. Now, when I was a kid, about Stetson's age, even younger, I was 9 or 10. There used to be a trailer right here, and we'd ride our four-wheelers up by here, and there was an old man. I don't know what his name was. He was a real scary guy. He only had one hand, and for his other hand he had a hook. So we always called him the Hook Man. And we always dared each other to come up this way to go to Syndicate instead of the four-wheeler trailway that comes from the north there. And we'd always see him out, and he was the Hook Man. He just had a hook on one hand. Always scared us, but that was quite a fun experience. But I think this is where they thought that the badger hole might have been, somewhere in this area. Now the story goes it was high in the foothills. So depending on the origins of whoever it was and where they came from, what they consider high foothills.
Way back then, you'd think this is the high foothills.
Yes, but it also could be up higher too. Because this mountain, it does this number. So if you were on horses trying to get away from Indians, you're going to go up whatever you can, steep or not. So it could be, but this is where I think they thought it was, and this is the area they focused on. It's closer than 3/4 of a mile from the Sugarloaf. 3/4 of a mile is a little bit further south than here. But then again, back then, 3/4 of a mile, it could have been.
Yeah, it's a guess.
Guessing.
It's a guess.
Been a half a mile. It could have been the next canyon over.
So Shem, these mines here, they were mining for gold or stuffs here, or was these where they was looking for them gold bars?
My understanding, what Dave had said, was they're just pioneer mines for gold.
Okay.
Just in this area, not necessarily.
So this wasn't necessarily the bullocks. This was just other pioneers had
I
been
think so.
mining here, and they
That's
just
my
they just
understanding.
knew about it. The bullocks.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
This looks like the area where we were shown before, where possibly would be the entrance for the badger hole.
And what made them think that this was it, and why didn't they dig it, or they did dig it and never did find nothing, or?
He didn't say,
Okay.
but he used the dowsing thing and showed how it
Crossed right there, and
or actually pointed toward this whole area.
you guys just doused it right now, and it does put
And
does cross right in there.
Yeah, it does have a reading and a pull to it. So who knows? This could be it.
Okay, so there's a really old, overgrown trail, and it's over on this hillside over here. And when I was a kid, we used to bring the four-wheelers up Syndicate in the wintertime. And, usually after a snowstorm, to see how far we can make it, to see if we can make it all the way. But this trail, in the wintertime, you could really see it. It would stand out.
So especially if there's a light skiff of snow, and that's a trick that most people don't know about, that if you're in an area that snows, man, after a light snow, look at the mountains, because that snow, there's a little depression there, and that snow will stick in them depressions and highlight them old trails. You can see them. Get your cameras out, take pictures of them, and then try and take a picture of them in the summertime or springtime. You don't see them.
Yeah.
So that's a great trick.
Yep, and there's no leaves on the trees either.
Yep.
And that helps. That helps as well. And now this trail, it's so old that there's trees. When Stetson and I hiked up to the halfway up to it and got on it, we followed it over and down, and there's trees. They're about that big around, growing right up out of the center of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's a trail about this wide, and it's got a good indentation. There's some areas where it's sloughed off, but you can tell there's a lot of horse trails on these mountains that get used today. You can tell this one, it hasn't been used in years. A lot of years. And you used to really be able to see it. And the thing is that gets me is it cuts across the face and kind of goes towards the bottom of that steep canyon. And I've never hiked the bottom. I've hiked up over to the Spring Lake Meadows across the top past Black Hawk's grave. But that trail goes up in, and it's almost like it dead ends right there in those ledges maybe. Might be able to see it cutting across up higher. Right there in that section.
Oh, I see.
There's that rock slide to the left of it, and it cuts. So it probably does a switchback and goes up to that point and then cuts back across. But I couldn't imagine it being a trail to go to the top of the mountain just because of the canyon it's going up. It's just steep. There's an old trail that goes past this Black Hawk grave, and it's actually an old log chute. The guys that would come up and log, they would pull the logs down with mules and they'd create log chutes. And the trail that we're going to be hiking up, it starts right there, but there's a log chute that comes down right through here. And there's an old trail that goes up that log chute, cuts across the face and up to the meadows, and there's another trail that goes up this canyon. And I think that's how they access to get to the top of the mountain. So that's what makes me wonder about this trail. I think it's really old. I think it's Spanish era.
Somebody made him a sundial here, huh?
Yeah.
So you're saying this is the one you guys seen?
It was different then.
You didn't see this one, it was something different.
It was this one, but it was different.
So somebody's rebuilt it?
Yes, definitely.
So what you seen was more older and somebody's come up and rebuilt this.
Look, they've even cemented spots on this. There's nothing cemented before. And there were spots where the rocks had been moved a little. They had been scattered a little bit before.
Yeah, I don't know who or why, but some of these rocks are big. So they went to a lot of water.
Yeah, tarantula or Carolina wolf spider hole. I don't think it's a snake hole. I think it's a spider hole. Yeah, they definitely have cement. It's very interesting. There was definitely two where there was, and the rocks weren't this big. They were smaller rocks all the way around, and then rocks about this big placed in front of the other ones.
Huh.
So they're about this far apart all the way around. Very interesting.
So you don't really know if that was this right here or someplace else, huh?
I think it was here.
They've just redone it, huh?
Yeah,
because this wasn't.
Well, for somebody to redo it, they had to know something, a history to it or something.
Yeah.
these are all cemented.
Yeah, there was no cement here.
And these are bigger rocks.
This is a shaft that I discovered. It was only a few years ago. We was up here shed hunting, and we're just right above the Syndicate mine. And I've been up here a lot, all growing up my whole life, and I didn't know about this shaft. When I discovered it, thought it was really fascinating, but coming up here today, just now, we got looking at the size of the mine dump here. It's a pretty good sized mine dump, so that shaft goes down quite a ways. Something we also noticed is these 3 trees here, and they're growing right on top of the mine dump. So that kind of gives us some sort of indication that this is really, really old.
For this bit of brush, or Shem called it something else, for these to be this big, that's pretty old.
Yeah. I just remember the old story, the Bullocks. They made a couple tunnels in, and they hadn't found anything.
So this is you think this is where they was looking for the gold bars, the trapper's gold?
I do. If it's not the 3 mines that were up there, then it'd have to be here. One of the 2. And I know, let's see, I can't remember the story goes, they dug a couple tunnels, they didn't find anything, so they started skirting on the inside, skirting the mountain.
Trying to intersect the tunnel?
Yeah, trying to intersect.
And so there's a shaft or a tunnel behind this shack here, but it's all caved in now?
I don't know if it's caved in. I know in the wintertime, me and my son came up here, we walked around behind it, and you could see a little bit of a crawl space. You could maybe get into it. But I don't think I've ever been back in this one. But I think, according to the dump, all this flat area
is the dump, and so it was a big,
long way.
So what's your story here, Shem, on this?
It's down lower is where the...
So, but wasn't you saying something about this?
Oh, I just checked it out behind it one day, and there was a cave where the mine shaft went in, and it caved in here, but then where it caved in, it was still open, and you could go still over the top of the cave in down into the mine.
Did you ever go in this one?
I didn't because it was scary looking. I went back behind it and see.
I never did either, but there's your rail.
Yeah, your railroad.
Good eye.
So there's a rail there of where they had an ore car coming out. So that it was underneath this shack. The shack was above it?
Yes.
Ah.
Right in underneath of it.
Okay.
I have no idea what this shack was for. You know why?
It's a garage for the mine dump. Can you get down in there? So it's the weather's opened it back up, it's caved in and opened up right there?
I think it did, Terry.
This is caved in quite a bit.
Oh, you can see the post. Yeah, it's caved in quite a bit.
Pretty unstable ceiling, be careful.
Yeah, see, this is the tonsils of the throat.
Ah.
So, yeah, Sky, just don't bump the walls.
How far back is it?
About another 50 feet. You see it? Look at all these quartz crystals. Lots.
Touch it.
Yeah, just don't bump any ceilings.
It's a tiny golden man.
Definitely a vein running through right here. You can see it on the right side, and then
Lots of quartz vein right
here on the left.
Lots of quartz vein. Look at this.
You got some more?
Yep. Right back in here.
I wonder why they decided to stop.
Because of the war?
a lot of these.
Well, yeah, that's true, huh?
See all this?
Because because the price of metal shot up, wasn't it?
Well, they all had to go to war. So when you come up here, this was all caved in, and they said there was a mine car still in here and an old track hoe or backhoe or something.
Yeah, they had a track hole partly in here to try to dig it out. This was covered up when Dave showed us. He said that there was a mine car still in there that they wanted to get out. And so I'm guessing that they got it out, but I don't know. One way to find out.
We must be right at the shoreline of Lake Bonneville. You see the rock?
Yeah.
How can you tell?
Little gravels.
It's got gravel.
Oh, I see. You gonna go in there?
Well, I don't know. I want to.
If they've been open like this, you know, people have been in there before, so you're not going to find anything interesting. If there was, you know, it's already gone.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about them. If it was something new that you discovered nobody'd been in before, that's a different story.
There's a couple.
So like that tunnel that shaft up there that you showed us, there might be some interesting things there. It might be worth it to rappel down in there and check that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll bet
You never know.
nobody's been in
Yeah.
that.
That would be an interesting, that's one you'd want to check out.
Yeah, and then that other one that's above Sugarloaf that me and Stetson saw from across the canyon. It almost looked like it was open through the binocular.
Huh?
And it's way up there, so I don't think anybody's been on it either.
Hmm.
And you can't see it from the valley because of it's like on a side hill that faces west. And we only could see it because we were clear up on the mountain, or faces southwest, and we were southwest of it, looking over to it.
Yeah.
And you can't see it.
So that's another one you'd want to check out. But ones like this, where people have come and they're easy to get to, it's fun exploring. But there's, you know,
Yeah.
it's not.
I remember one. I think my dad took me in this one when I was little. He took me in a few. One of them I remember, you go back so far.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, I did too.
You go back so far and it drops straight down.
Oh, that's probably what they did, was drop the rock down.
Oh, okay, they probably did.
That was a little scary.
Yeah.